My father banned me from celebrating my birthday ever again after my brother's death, so I ruined his retirement celebration the same way. When I turned 15, my older brother Danny died in a motorcycle accident on my birthday. It was horrible and tragic, and nobody felt like celebrating anything for months. I understood completely when we skipped my birthday that year. I didn't want to party either, but when my 16th birthday came around, my father sat me down and said we would never celebrate my birthday again because it was now Danny's death day. Not that year, not when the grief was fresh, but never again. He said acknowledging my birth on that day was disrespectful to Danny's memory. My mom tried to suggest we celebrate on a different day, but Dad said that would be pretending the real day didn't exist, and we couldn't hide from reality. So 16 came and went with nothing. 17, 18, 19, all just Danny's death anniversary. Dad would spend the day looking at Danny's photos and visiting his grave while I sat at home pretending I wasn't getting a year older. My friends would text happy birthday and I'd delete them before Dad saw, because he'd lecture me about making the day about myself. When I turned 21, my roommates at college threw me a surprise party. Dad found out from a photo someone tagged me in and drove 3 hours to scream at me about dishonoring my brother. He told all my friends I was selfish for celebrating while Danny was dead. He made such a scene that campus security had to remove him. My roommate Dana asked if my dad was mentally stable and I didn't know how to answer. For my 25th birthday, my boyfriend Kyle wanted to take me to dinner. Just a quiet dinner. Nothing that celebrated anything. Just food on a day that happened to be my birthday. Dad found out because he'd been tracking my location through my phone and showed up at the restaurant with Danny's urn. He put it on our table and said Danny should be included if we were going to be selfish. Kyle left me 2 weeks later saying my family was too intense. Dad said it was for the best since Kyle didn't understand real loss. My 30th birthday was the breaking point. I'd been in therapy for 2 years working through the guilt and shame Dad had programmed into me. My therapist said it was okay to exist on my birthday, that Danny wouldn't want me to disappear every year. I decided to have a small gathering at my apartment, just 5 close friends for wine and cheese. Dad wasn't invited or informed. Somehow he found out, probably from stalking my credit card for party supplies. He showed up with my mom and Danny's high school girlfriend Lisa, who he'd stayed weirdly close with. He stood in my living room and announced that I was spitting on Danny's grave by eating cheese on his death day. Lisa cried about her lost love who she'd dated for 3 months freshman year. Mom stood there silent like always. My friend Helen asked Dad when Danny's actual birthday was, and Dad said March 15th. Helen asked if he celebrated that day, and Dad said of course they honored Danny's life every year on his birthday. Helen asked how that was different from me having a birthday, and Dad said Danny died on my birthday, so it was his day now. Helen, who was a grief counselor, told Dad he needed serious therapy, and he called her a heartless bitch who didn't understand a father's pain. After that disaster, I started planning. See, Dad was retiring at 60, and had been planning his retirement party for 2 years. He'd booked a country club, hired a band, and invited 300 people. He talked about it constantly, how it would be the celebration of his career, his legacy, his contributions to the company. He'd picked the date specially because it was exactly 35 years from when he started at the firm. The date was March 15th, Danny's birthday. I called the country club and confirmed the date. I contacted the band and verified they were booked for March 15th. I reached out to Dad's assistant and made sure all the invitations said March 15th. Then I waited. The week before his retirement party, I sent flowers to Danny's grave with a card that said, "Thinking of you on your birthday, March 15th, from your loving sister." I made sure Dad would see them when he did his weekly visit. I watched him read the card 3 times before it clicked. His retirement party was on Danny's birthday. He called me panicking, saying he'd made a terrible mistake with the date. I said, wow, that was really disrespectful to Danny's memory to throw a party on his birthday. Dad said it was different because it wasn't intentional. I said, but now that he knew, he'd have to cancel, because celebrating anything on Danny's birthday would be spitting on his memory. Dad said the party wasn't about birthdays. I said neither were any of mine, but that hadn't mattered. Dad tried to explain that deposits were non-refundable. People had traveled from out of state. The company had made arrangements. I said those sounded like selfish concerns when Danny was dead. He said I was being ridiculous, and I repeated back every single thing he'd said to me for 15 years. That acknowledging any celebration on that day was disgusting. That Danny deserved better than a father who partied on his birthday. That real parents would never allow joy on such a sacred day. Dad hung up and threw his party anyway. I made sure to attend with Danny's urn that I'd borrowed from Mom. Full story on channel. Link below.